Why so many seniors die within a year of retirement. 5 brutal truths no one tells you. Have you ever felt like you were counting down to retirement your whole life, only to finally get there and feel lost? Maybe the days feel longer than they used to, but not in a good way. The quiet that you used to long for now feels a little too quiet. And even though everyone told you retirement would be the best time of your life, you can't shake the feeling that something's just off. You're not alone. A lot of people feel this strange sense of unease after retiring. And sadly, there's something many don't talk about, something that's a bit uncomfortable but very real. It's this: a surprising number of seniors pass away within just a year of retiring. Not because of illness alone. Not just because of age. But because of deeper, hidden truths that rarely make the headlines. Today, we're going to talk about those truths. Not to scare you, but to help you see them clearly, face them with strength, and most importantly, to do something about them. Because knowing what's really going on can help you live not just a longer life, but a better one. So let's sit down, just the two of us, and talk about what's really happening in this phase of life, and how you can stay ahead of it. Let's start with the first truth, and this one might surprise you. Many people lose their sense of purpose the moment they retire. Think about it. For decades, your job gave you structure. You had a reason to get up in the morning. People needed you, you had tasks to complete, and whether you loved the work or not, it gave you a rhythm. Then suddenly, one day, it's gone. You sleep in, you drink your coffee a little slower, you sit around more, and at first, it feels relaxing. But after a while, the days start to blur together. You may ask yourself, what am I supposed to do now? That lack of purpose can feel like a slow leak in a tire. You don't notice it at first, but over time, your energy fades, your mood dips, and your body starts to follow. Science backs this up. Studies show that having a strong sense of purpose can help you live longer, keep your mind sharp, and even reduce the risk of heart disease. When that sense of purpose disappears, the body starts to drift too. But here's the good news: purpose isn't something that disappears when your job ends. It's something you can rediscover. Whether it's volunteering, mentoring, caring for a grandchild, learning a new skill, or even growing a garden, anything that gives you a reason to get up, to be useful, to matter, that's your new purpose. And it doesn't have to be big. It just has to be yours. Now let's talk about the second truth, and this one's a little harder to face. After retirement, many people unknowingly isolate themselves. When you were working, you might not have noticed how many small connections filled your day. You chatted with coworkers, exchanged a smile with someone at the coffee shop, maybe even complained about traffic to a neighbor. These tiny moments of connection helped your brain stay active and your heart feel alive. But in retirement, it's easy to drift into a quieter life, too quiet, sometimes. You might not feel lonely at first. Maybe you enjoy the peace. But little by little, social circles shrink. Friends move away. Kids are busy. Phone calls become less frequent. And before long, you realize the days pass without much real conversation. Loneliness isn't just an emotional issue, it's a physical one too. Studies show that chronic loneliness can be as harmful to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It raises your risk of dementia, depression, and even early death. That's the brutal truth. But again, it's one you can do something about. It might take effort, especially if you're more introverted or independent, but making time to connect is one of the healthiest things you can do. Join a local club or senior center, call up an old friend, or even start a little breakfast group at your favorite diner. If you're tech-savvy, virtual communities can be surprisingly uplifting, too. The important thing is not to let yourself disappear into silence. Now, let's look at a third truth that slips under the radar: retirement can drastically reduce physical activity. It's easy to understand why. When you were working, even if your job wasn't physically demanding, you were likely moving more, getting in and out of the car, walking to meetings, even standing at your desk. But once you retire, especially if you're not careful, your world can shrink to just a few rooms in your house. And when you sit more, you move less. Muscles weaken. Balance worsens. your stamina drops. Before long, even a short walk feels exhausting. Movement isn't just about staying in shape, it's about keeping your independence. It keeps your blood flowing, your brain firing, your bones strong. But here's what's important to remember: you don't need to run marathons or lift heavy weights. Just gentle, consistent movement each day makes a world of difference. Walk around the block after lunch. Stretch while you're watching TV. Dance in the kitchen while your coffee brews. Gardening, cleaning, playing with the grandkids, these all count. The key is to keep moving. Think of your body like a car. It runs better when it's driven regularly, not when it sits in the garage gathering dust. So, we've talked about how retirement can steal your sense of purpose, increase isolation, and reduce your physical activity, all of which can contribute to why some seniors decline so rapidly after they leave the workforce. But these aren't reasons to be afraid. They're reasons to act. Because once you know what to look for, you can take small steps to stay ahead of them and to make this next chapter the most fulfilling yet. Now that we've looked at some of the emotional and physical challenges that come with retirement, let's keep going. There's another brutal truth we need to talk about, one that has to do with something most of us try to avoid thinking about altogether: our identity. Here's the fourth truth, and it might sting a little: retirement can create a sudden identity crisis. You see, when you've spent 30, 40, even 50 years being the teacher, the nurse, the manager, the provider, or the problem solver, that title becomes part of who you are. People respected you for it. You knew your role. You had a sense of pride every time you introduced yourself or looked back at what you accomplished. Then one day, you're retired. And just like that, the title is gone. People stop asking what you do. Conversations shift to small talk or health issues. You may feel like you're slowly fading into the background. Not on purpose, but it happens. And if you've ever found yourself staring at the mirror, wondering, who am I now? You're not crazy. You're just facing something millions of retirees go through. This sudden change in identity can affect how you see yourself, how much confidence you have, and how much you believe you still have to offer. But here's the beautiful part: retirement doesn't have to mean the end of your identity, it can be the beginning of a new one. Think of this time not as the end of a career, but as the start of a new chapter you get to write. You're no longer defined by a job title. You're free to be more than one thing now. Always wanted to paint? Go for it. Been thinking about writing your story down for the grandkids? Now's the time. Maybe you want to become the wise one in your community, mentoring younger folks or teaching a class at the library. You've got wisdom that no degree or title could ever match. So instead of clinging to the role you used to play, let this be your invitation to redefine yourself on your terms. All right. Now, let's talk about something that's a little uncomfortable but very real for a lot of folks after retirement. And that's this: your daily routine can quietly fall apart, and that can be dangerous. That's the fifth brutal truth. When you don't have a schedule to anchor you, when there's no clock to punch, no lunch hour, no meetings or set appointments, it's easy to drift. Wake up late one day. Skip breakfast the next. Watch TV a little longer. Stay in your pajamas all day because, well, who's going to see you? But here's the catch: the body thrives on rhythm. The mind does too. When you throw off your routine, you throw off your sleep, your appetite, your energy levels, and even your immune system. It might start with feeling a little sluggish, but over time, it can spiral into real health issues: depression, insomnia, weight gain, cognitive decline. Now, I'm not saying you need to wake up at 6 a.m. and follow a military schedule. That's not the point. The point is intentionality. Your day doesn't have to be packed, but it does need shape. A little structure gives your body the cues it needs to stay balanced and your mind the spark it needs to stay sharp. So how do you do that? Start simple. Wake up at the same time each day. Set aside a specific time for a walk, for reading, for calling a friend, for a hobby, even just for sitting outside in the sun. Create your own rhythm, one that works for you. You don't need to be busy every hour. But having a plan, even a loose one, gives your day purpose and direction. And that small shift can have a huge impact on your well-being. Let me tell you something important here. None of these truths mean retirement is something to fear. They're just the parts that don't make it into the brochure. The truth is, retirement can be an incredible season of life if you walk into it with your eyes open. If you know what to expect, you can stay strong, stay ahead of the curve, and make choices that keep you vibrant and alive, not just existing, but truly living. And if you've already found yourself feeling a little off balance, like maybe these things are already happening in your life, that's okay. It's never too late to adjust. Never too late to reconnect, to rediscover, to realign. You are not done. You are not invisible. And you certainly are not irrelevant. In fact, this phase of life can be one of the richest, most meaningful times you'll ever have, if you treat it like a beginning, not an ending. So much of what affects our health and happiness after retirement isn't physical, it's mental. It's emotional. It's the little things that slowly build up or fall apart without us realizing. And once we see them clearly, we can change course. You deserve a retirement filled with laughter, movement, purpose, and connection. One where you don't just survive, you thrive. You've worked hard for this chapter. Now it's time to write it the way you want. So, as we continue, let's take everything we've talked about, the purpose, the movement, the social connection, the identity, the routine, and bring it home. Because there's still more to this story. There's one more piece we need to explore to really pull it all together. And it just might be the most important one yet, because without this last piece, everything else, your purpose, your routine, your identity, they can start to crumble under the weight of something we often overlook: emotional health. It's easy to focus on the physical changes that come with aging. The stiff knees, the slower mornings, the medications lined up on the kitchen counter. But what doesn't always get talked about is the quiet storm that can brew inside. And here's the sixth truth, one that many carry silently. After retirement, suppressed emotions, regrets, and unprocessed grief can come to the surface, and they can take a bigger toll than you think. When you're working and raising a family, there's always something to distract you. You push through tough memories, set aside emotional pain, and keep going because, well, you had to. But retirement slows everything down. The noise fades. And with that silence, old thoughts and feelings can come creeping back in. Maybe it's grief over someone you lost years ago. Maybe it's guilt over something you wish you'd done differently. Maybe it's a lifetime of "I'll deal with it later" that now demands your attention. This emotional weight can become heavy. Heavier than any physical burden. It can show up as fatigue, sadness, low motivation, even unexplained aches and pains. The body and the mind are deeply connected, and when the heart is hurting, it can take the rest of you down with it. But here's the thing, facing these emotions doesn't have to be scary. In fact, it can be freeing. Retirement gives you space to reflect, yes, but also the chance to heal. You don't have to carry it all by yourself anymore. You're allowed to talk to someone about what you've been holding in. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to forgive yourself. You're allowed to feel joy again without guilt. Sometimes, it just takes one honest conversation, with a friend, a counselor, a faith leader, or even with yourself, to begin letting go of what's been weighing you down. Because when you make peace with your past, you create space in your heart for the future. And you do have a future. That's what all of this comes back to. You're not winding down, you're evolving. You have more control than you think. More choices. More paths still open. The only question is, are you willing to believe that? Now, let's take a deep breath together. I know we've touched on some heavy things today. But this conversation isn't about gloom or fear, it's about truth. And with truth comes power. You've earned the right to live your later years with clarity and confidence. But it doesn't happen by accident. It takes intention. So let's take a moment to pull all of this together, like we're tying a ribbon around a gift, because that's what this really is. A gift to yourself. You've learned that without a sense of purpose, the days can start to feel empty. But purpose doesn't retire when you do. It just waits for you to redefine it. You've seen how isolation can sneak in silently, but so can connection if you're open to it. Every phone call, every shared laugh, every new face at a coffee shop is a thread that keeps you woven into the world. You've discovered how movement, simple, daily movement, isn't just exercise, it's medicine. And it's available to you every single day. You've acknowledged how identity shifts can be disorienting, but also full of opportunity. This is your moment to explore who you are beyond a job title or a role. You've recognized the power of routine, not as a prison, but as a foundation. One that supports you and keeps you steady, no matter how the world around you changes. And now, you've opened the door to your emotional world. You've honored what you've been through and made space for healing and growth. That's not just surviving retirement. That's mastering it. So where do you go from here? You start by being gentle with yourself. You don't need to overhaul your entire life in one day. Maybe you just go for a short walk tomorrow morning. Maybe you call someone you haven't spoken to in a while. Maybe you try something new, just to remind yourself that life still has surprises left. You matter. You are not done. Your wisdom, your stories, your presence, they have value. Whether you're 60, 70, 80, or beyond, your life still has chapters to be written. And they can be filled with meaning, beauty, and joy if you choose to show up for them. So tell me this, what would happen if you started treating this part of life not like an ending, but like a beginning? What if the best moments weren't behind you, but still ahead? Because they can be. And they will be, as long as you keep choosing to live with curiosity, purpose, and heart. If this conversation touched you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your story in the comments. Let us know what retirement has been like for you, what surprised you, what's challenged you, what's brought you joy. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a like so others can find it too. Subscribe to the channel for more real, honest, and hopeful conversations about life after 60. We're in this together, and I'm so glad you're here. Here's to living your best life at any age.